when I came into herbalism, as I said, I was a young single mother. I always say chamomile was the other parent in the household. It really helped me raise that kid.
Hello and welcome to the Herbs with Rosalee podcast, a show exploring how herbs heal as medicine, as food, and through nature connection. I'm your host, Rosalee de la Forêt. I created this YouTube channel to share trusted herbal wisdom so that you can get the best results when relying on herbs for your health. I love offering up practical knowledge to help you dive deeper into the world of medicinal plants and seasonal living. Each episode of the Herbs with Rosalee podcast is shared on YouTube as well as your favorite podcast app. Transcripts and recipes for each episode can be found at herbswithrosaleepodcast.com or through the link in the video description. Also in the video description, you'll find other helpful resources. For example, to get my best herbal tips, as well as fun bonuses, be sure to sign up for my weekly herbal newsletter. Okay, grab your cup of tea and let's dive in. Do you love chamomile? I love chamomile. And as you'll see, my guest, Rebecca Luna, loves chamomile too. In fact, we just full-on fangirled about chamomile throughout this entire episode. We talked about chamomile tea, chamomile oil, chamomile glycerite, as well as chamomile gifts for babies and throughout menopause. We also chatted about what it's like running an herbal apothecary, something Rebecca's been doing for almost 20 years. For those of you who don't already know her, Rebecca Luna is an herbalist and the proprietress of Rebecca's Herbal Apothecary and Supply. This retail shop provides everything one needs to use and make botanical medicines. They have a production kitchen where they craft a line of herbal products right on site. Rebecca has been steeped in herbalism since the early 1990s and is a graduate of the Rocky Mountain Center for Botanical Medicine. She's worked as a community herbalist, postpartum doula, and botanical medicine making teacher. She opened her apothecary in 2004 with the aim of connecting the community with botanical medicine and providing a thriving work environment for herbalists. Rebecca, I am so excited to have you here on the podcast. Thank you for being here.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you for having me today.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. So I mentioned this already in the introduction, but I met you after this incredible experience of going to Red Rocks, Colorado this year, and then asking, and I have to mention, I saw Tori Amos there, and I had gotten a couple hours of sleep that night, and I'd asked on my Facebook page, what should I do while I'm in the Denver area? And I had so many people say, you cannot miss Rebecca's apothecary. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I'm not really going to Boulder. And then another person said it, and another person said it, and another person said it. And so I ended up actually taking an Uber to go to Boulder just to go to the apothecary. And I'm so glad I did. And I got to meet you, and it was just all so lovely. So yeah, I'm just so glad to have you here. Thanks for saying yes.
Well, I feel really honored and special that you took the time to come out and visit us. And I have to say, every time I hear Tori Amos now, I think of you.
Oh, I love that. That's like my goal in life. So thank you. We're done here.
She's fabulous. She's so good.
Yeah. Well, I want to hear first. I actually don't know your story at all, and I would love to hear like your story of becoming on the plant path.
Oh, okay. It's kind of interesting. Thank you for asking. I'd like to tell people I was a welder before I was an herbalist, which
This is the first time I've heard this.
Yes,
No one
yes.
else has been a welder first. That has not been a pathway.
Well, I was quite young. I ended up I was pregnant. I had this beautiful little baby. You can't weld when you're pregnant, and I was trying to figure out what to do with my life. And I had my brother, who I just adore, was living in Colorado. I was living in Washington, D.C. And he said, why don't you come out to Colorado? They were getting ready to have their first baby. And I was a single mom, sort of struggling. And they said, we can help you and you can help us. And I said, what am I going to do in Colorado? And he said, well, there's an herb school. And I said, what's herb school? I mean, it was that fluky for sure. Like,
Wow.
I knew garlic was good for you. And I come from a very sort of traditional Italian American household. Where food is medicine for sure, but it was a real fluke. And then I remember the first day of school. This was the Rocky Mountain Center for Botanical Studies, and Feather Jones made loose leaf tea, which was the first time I saw that. And I just thought it was I was just immediately drawn into it. And she said, herbalists are outlaws. And I was like, ooh, that sounds like a
Mhm.
good match. And I just felt really empowered, especially as a young, broke, single mom, and just really fell in love with it. That's kind of how I got into. I mean, I went to herb school and then later became a teacher at the school, and then I taught at Bastyr University for a while. But the real dream after going through herb school and practicing a little bit, I did some postpartum care, uh, was the shop. The shop
Mhm.
was really my dream.
Wow. So I think, I mean, the shop, you have created such a magical, special place with Rebecca's Apothecary.
Thank you.
One that is famous beyond Boulder, Colorado. Um,
Mm.
and I'm wondering, why did you, what is it about the shop? Like, obviously, that spoke to you on a deep level. That was your dream. And do you have any insight as to, like, I don't know, kind of the deeper goal or the deeper mission behind the shop?
Thank you for asking that. I mean, for me, so for me, herbalism was so empowering. It was amazing to see that, oh, I could get medicine just going out into my yard. That just blew blew my mind and was so profound for my spirit. And the idea, so part of the shop for me is very political in the way of social justice, of having everyone's birthright being the knowledge to use the plants around you, to make that as accessible as possible to people, to let them know it's the simplest remedies that are the most profound. This should
Mhm.
there's it should be accessible. And so what a pleasure to be able to be a part of making that accessible to folks. It also, I found it very hard to make a living as an herbalist straight out of school. And another thing was to be able to have a steady paycheck for herbalists, sort of as they get their feet going
Mhm.
and that sort of thing. And then also, when you get people excited about the plants around them and using their plants, then they're going to naturally be excited or interested in environmentalism. So that for me, this sort of checked all those boxes. And then there's a selfish side, which was that as a botanical medicine making teacher, I could never find everything I needed in one place, and now I have everything I need in one move. I was getting
Mhm.
ready for this and I was like, oh, I need chamomile, and I could just go grab some off the shelf. So it's very selfish. I have
Mm.
all my
Well, I love all of those reasons. There's a couple of things I just want to circle back to. One, I love that you're a welder and that just a fluke you got into herbal school, but how it just resonated with you so deeply. And I think that is just very empowering because sometimes I interview people and they are just, I always think like they're the lucky ones, like their story begins when they were 2 and they were out in the yard, playing with plantain. And I like, oh, like that's the dream, right? That more and more of us have that experience. But sometimes we can feel like, oh, if I didn't have that, then maybe like, herbalism is just there's a hurdle there or something. But I love that you're like, no, I was a welder. And then I just like fell into this path. And I just think that's beautiful. Like no matter where we come from, once the plants reach out to us, they're there. So I love that. And I love the social justice and environmental aspect too, because that was actually a big thing for me. I often like joke I minored in social justice when I was in college because that was kind of what I spent all of my stuff doing was just activism. But man, I was, like 20 and I just stand on the street corners and yell at people and because, I was angry, like why weren't people paying attention and all these injustices in the world. And after a while I just realized, whoa, that is not like I'm just not really accomplishing like what I want to accomplish with this tactic. And then by a fluke, I made it to a wilderness school and I watched people's lives transform, including my own, by becoming connected to the place where we lived, by making medicine with the plants. And so that was kind of like, I was like, oh, this is my in, this is a way to have an impact. So I appreciate that with the store, that was part of that. And just, yeah, giving the back people's birthright of plants as medicine.
And I think you are creating so much access through your podcast here. And I mean, it's amazing. I was telling you before the show, I mean, I've sort of gotten re-excited about things listening to you. I'm just so grateful for what you do.
Oh, thanks, Rebecca.
Mm.
Well, so now I have more questions about the shop, but
Okay.
maybe let's dive into chamomile. I just can't even wait because chamomile, I don't think you know this, is one of my very favorite plants. If you like twisted my arm, most days I might say it's my favorite. So, although it is impossible to choose. So I'm excited to talk about chamomile, and I'm excited to hear what inspired you to choose chamomile out of all the plants out there.
I mean, anybody who works with me or knows me, that is it. She is sort of my main ally
Mm,
herb for sure, and there's so many reasons. And also that sort of social justice birthright thing. Chamomile for me is so accessible to so many people. And it's, even people who might, like family members who might think I'm a little wacky or out there being an herbalist and they don't get it, but they've heard of chamomile tea.
mhm,
I mean, almost everyone has heard of chamomile tea or used it or had it in their life. So I love the accessibility of it. We can talk really about, I mean, the amount of uses of this plant, as you surely know, is just staggering. But it's also like, I mean, I planted chamomile one time, just once,
hmm,
never had to water it, and it just flourishes. It
mm,
just is so readily available. I love that about so that's one of the main things. I also felt like, when I came into herbalism, as I said, I was a young single mother. I always say chamomile was the other parent in the household.
hmm.
It really helped me raise that kid,
Yeah.
and it helped me. I mean, even just sort of getting ready for this today, I'm having my chamomile tea for, to help keep me calm and centered. I could have a beautiful, strong medicine within 10 minutes. I mean,
Mm,
just so readily available. I just think it's such a mothering, grandmotherly, I love this plant.
mm.
I mean, we could go through all the things. I've got lists and lists. It was really hard to narrow it down what I love about it. I hope I'm not going on and on. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely not. The sense I had when you were just talking about it, you said it's so accessible. Within 10 minutes, you have this wonderful medicine. And the image I had in my mind is like, and it's so different from like, yeah, you could walk to your medicine cabinet and pull out some pharmaceutical pills, like over the counter pills, and pop those. But it's such a different kind of medicine. I mean, this is like the epitome of what makes herbal medicine so great is that chamomile isn't something you just like throw back real quick. It's something you get to smell. And then it's something that brings a lot of physical and mental, emotional relief in a comforting way. Like you mentioned that it's mothering. It's such a comfort. And I love that. This is like, again, epitome of herbal medicine that our herbs are beautiful every step of the process, and then they have so many gifts.
Yes. Yes. And I love that you said the steam, you make your tea and then if you just breathe it in while I know with chamomile, you like to brew it lidded to hold in the volatile oils, but I mean, also just let yourself enjoy that steam coming up. I mean, it's going to be fabulous for your skin, but your whole mood, it sort of invites you into that cup of tea,
Hmm.
but also, even just having it, even if you don't brew it and you just have it in a little bag in sachets around and just crunching the bag of chamomile blossoms, that is medicine.
Mm, mhm.
It's amazing. It's
Yeah.
so, repeating myself, but so accessible. And, getting ready for this, one of the things I remembered from my studies long ago, but I kept coming across was that it's called the plant's physician.
Hmm.
And so if, plants are having a hard time or they're a little droopy, Maud Greaves talks about this in her Modern Herbal, if you plant chamomile near a sad plant, it'll help bring that plant to wellness.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I love it. Oh,
Come on. That's so
yeah.
good. Yeah.
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 I was just imagining like the chamomile bringing us comfort and through that, that comfort, joy. And so just seeing the chamomile does that for all beings, apparently, the plants too.
Yeah. Yeah. And what an ally for children. I mean, it's great for everyone. It's great in menopause. It's great but really for children, what a wonderful, wonderful plant. And the recipe that I gave was a chamomile bath, which I think is just one, to me, it's one of my favorite remedies with this plant. And a long time ago, I heard that there's a folk saying, I can't remember where I heard this, but that to give an infant their first bath in a bath, infused with chamomile, to reassure them that they were born into a good world.
Mhm. Oh, that's beautiful. Oh, let's talk about this chamomile bath recipe. I was so thrilled that you chose this as your recipe and gifted it to us because I like to think of myself as famous for loving chamomile baths. It's one of the ways that I work with chamomile the most is as a bath, and I just find it to be so comforting, so soothing for so many different reasons. And one funny story I have about that is one time in our rooted medicine circle class, I was demonstrating hand baths, and I used 2 cups of chamomile and steeped it and then put it in a hand bath. And so I'm modeling this and showing people how to do it. And I'm actually have my hands soaked in the water. Well, 2 cups of chamomile in a hand bath, I can tell you, is profoundly sedating and maybe not what you want when you're in the middle of teaching. Thank goodness I had a co-teacher, Emily Hahn, who was able to kind of like take over because it was funny, but like kind of not funny for me as a teacher. And that like I literally had to go to the couch. Like I felt like I was like so tired. I just couldn't even like keep myself propped up anymore. So, it just, you don't need 2 cups for a hand bath unless you want that. Of course, unless you want that.
Yep. Yep.
But yeah, let's talk about your recipe and just ways you enjoy or reasons why you would be like, oh, I need a chamomile bath.
I mean, I have a story. I had a friend was traveling with her toddler from Australia, which was
Mhm.
rough. And we
Yeah.
were very young, early 20s. And she came in, and the baby was not, she was just not doing well. And my friend was giving her sort of every over the counter thing that she possibly could. She also came and immediately came to my house, which was over 8,000 feet up in the mountains. And, 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 and the one thing that started to help resolve was making a nice, I brought some sort of props just to show you, like,
Oh, cool.
here's some chamomile, right? And then maybe you take a canning jar is sort of my favorite way to do it. And I'm just, because this is for home, I can use my hands, I'm going to fill the camo. Is this okay showing you
Oh
in?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
Let's see it.
So like I put a bunch of chamomile in the jar here. I like to add some lavender, but maybe just a pinch. You'll see in the recipe that it's a little bit of lavender to chamomile because too much lavender is a little stimulating. But anyway, then you pour boiling water over this and lid it and let it sit. You want to make sure that it gets to room temperature, because you certainly don't want to put boiling water in a bath with anybody. It's always good to put, for me, to put the resulting tea, pour it through a strainer into the bath, or you could pour it into a cloth and catch the
Mm,
herbs. Maybe add some oatmeal in there and then tie the cloth off, and you have this bundle
mm,
to use. Is really nice. But anyway, so then you've got this tea, you pour it in the bath, and then you add the bath water to make it to a comfortable temperature. And when we put this little toddler in the bath, they just immediately could start
mm,
relaxing and then letting their body heal.
mm.
It just sort of that quiet, just being able to get in all your cells and bathe in it. Oh, I can't, I don't have a bathtub right now. I should have one in about 2 months. Yeah.
Oh, so chamomile bath is probably in your future.
Yeah. But I mean,
Yeah.
it can reduce the fever. And we know fevers are good most of the time, but sometimes you really need to just cut it down so that that being can rest,
Mm-hmm.
and it reduces that nervousness and the irritation. And this kid had just been up and down, and I mean,
Mm-hmm.
digestive upset, all that stuff. It's
Mm-hmm.
well, we can go through. I mean, what doesn't it do,
Yeah.
really?
What doesn't it do?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned fever, and chamomile is one of my favorites. One indication for chamomile for me, even for adults, is a fever where someone feels really restless and irritable and has body aches and possibly a headache. And you can have a
Yeah.
really strong bath or a really strong tea of chamomile and then go to bed. And
Yeah.
you'll wake up feeling better. I have just seen that time and time again. It's all of those indications. Like you have the fever. And again, it's not to like be like, oh, we're gonna, oppress your fever or try to artificially lower it. It's really like supporting your body's process. And when you're just feeling like whiny and irritable and you have a fever and you just don't feel good and you want someone to take care of you, chamomile will take care of you.
Yeah. But I mean, that's so specific and great. Exactly. Yes. Yeah. That is the way. I mean, again, it covers all those bases. And it
Yeah.
doesn't it feel like the ancestors are coming and helping when you have chamomile? That's how I
Yeah.
feel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And you mentioned anti-inflammatory. I'd love to talk about that because I feel like chamomile is kind of underrated as something that modulates inflammation
Yeah, I mean, it's underrated all around,
all
but
around.
yes,
Yeah.
I consider it one of our best anti-inflammatories. It's in our tummy tea blend, and
Mm.
that's our, with the meadow sweet blossoms, very anti-inflammatory, but
Mm.
also, so here's a good example of that. And I apologize, I keep going back to kids stuff, but
That's great.
I think about a teething child, right? And their gums are inflamed. So I like to take chamomile, make a nice strong chamomile tea, and take a very clean cloths and dip it in the tea and freeze the cloths. So then when they're
Mm.
teething, they can chew on that cold cloth. Well, the chamomile itself is so anti-inflammatory for those inflamed gums. Also, the cold is going to be anti-inflammatory. It helps reduce that irritation that the kid is having. Sometimes they have a
Mhm.
non-productive fever. It can help reduce that. It also, they can get some digestive upset from the teething, and it covers that base too. And then as a parent, you can drink the tea while you're making it so that you are more patient with that child. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, I'm thinking like, what doesn't chamomile do?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. I love it in an oil too,
Oh, I
infusing
was
it
gonna
into the
ask you if you work
chamomile.
with it in oil. That's kind of my new favorite. I mean, new in the past couple of years, but it's a favorite of mine. Such a favorite. Tell me how you like to work with it.
Well, again, it's just so giving. It just loves being in the oil. I put it in, I
Mhm.
usually infuse it in an organic olive oil. That tends to be my favorite for the infused oils. And it just gives of itself so well. It's so easy to sort of powder up. And I put it in our sore muscle oil. It's the
Mhm.
infused olive oil of the chamomile is a base. That mixed with infused ginger oil. But in
Mm.
particular, I've found with people who have that extreme jaw pain, like the
I'm interesting.
inflammatory, going back to that, and they're so tense and they're clenching their jaw all the time. And this is something I feel safe on their face. It's
Mhm.
anti-inflammatory. And again, calming them down, and it just feels soft. What a nice oil to massage with before bed.
Mhm.
It's not too stimulating, but it's also analgesic, I agree with you. It is so underrated. She is small but mighty, I tell you. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I often will rub it on before bed, and it's just such a comforting smell and so lovely. And then sometimes specifically, um, I'll get restless legs where like my legs are like jumpy
Yeah.
before bed. And when that happens, I know that I can put chamomile. I often do like chamomile and St. John's wort. And
Perfect.
obviously, like for anyone listening, you need to look at, things like your minerals and magnesium and everything, which I do, but sometimes there's still like some restlessness there. And the chamomile is just so wonderful for rubbing that on my legs, and then I just can go to sleep just like that.
Yep. I love your pairing with the St. John's. Yeah.
Yeah, I was really just like out of desperation. I think that happened one night, just like what do I have that will work? And I just found like when I put the both of them on, it's really lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And interesting that I love that you're talking about this love of the infused oil. A lot of times when I infuse plants into oils, which is one of my favorite preparations, you don't get the scent of the plant in
Mhm.
the infused oil so much. You might add essential oil if you really want that aromatherapy bit, but boy, the chamomile is just there.
Mhm. Yeah, that is so true. Yeah. Um, you mentioned it for menopause briefly, and I'm curious about that.
Well, I think of, it's with its anti-inflammatory, it's great for any sort of, I've been for menstrual pains, that sort of thing. But I also think this is funny. I've never read about chamomile for liver, but I think of it sort of as a livery kind of herb. Well, because it does everything. But I think of that, that bitterness and
Mhm,
the yellow
absolutely.
color.
Yeah.
And I think of it as something that helps support the liver while it's processing hormones and that sort of thing. And also just, I mean, I'm postmenopausal now, and I I I'm a pretty even keel person, but going through when that really started for me, perimenopause, I really the emotional side of that was very hard for me. And I felt myself getting, sort of going from 0 to 60 very fast. And I think chamomile was an old friend, and again was supportive quickly. Like,
Mm,
okay, to put it in modern terms, it's the friend you just text and they just show up and they're there for you. You
hmm,
know what I mean? You
mhm,
don't have to do emails and have someone schedule the date.
mhm. Yeah, I love that. I love that. Yeah.
I hope
Yeah,
that makes sense.
it does. Yeah, chamomile being a very loyal friend who's got your back right away.
Well, and with that steam, it would encourage me to breathe it in, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah, beautiful. Now I feel like you're my chamomile pal because you
Yeah.
love chamomile. I love chamomile. Another favorite way that I've been working with it lately is glycerites. I used to not like glycerites at all, and now I'm more into them, and chamomile works just really lovely as a glycerite. And sometimes I'll combine it like just for like a little added oomph is a tincture and a glycerite, just tincture chamomile, tincture or the glycerite chamomile, mix them like half and half. And yeah, I take that traveling now. Like, I just don't even leave home without it, because just, the like we've been talking about, everything chamomile is great for. It's like, what happens when you travel? Well, sometimes your digestion could be a little bit off. Sometimes, okay, with me all the time, like nervousness and anxiety can happen while traveling, and having being in a different time zone, having trouble sleeping can be a problem. So chamomile's like, that friend that will text you right back with me. So so yeah, that's anyway, so I'm just curious if you work with it as a tincture or glycerite.
I'm yet again inspired by you. No, I haven't done that. There's a local company, Wish Garden, here that's a fabulous company, and she makes chamomile glycerite. But I haven't made glycerites in 20 years or something. I
Mm.
don't know why I haven't dabbled there, but it sounds wonderful and also more easily accessible than just a straight tincture straight in.
Yeah, I think
So
that
I'm
somehow the
inspired.
tincture started bothering me this year's alcohol. I just wasn't getting along with it, and I feel like I ignored glycerites for 20 years, and now I'm kind of like, for certain plants, they're just really wonderful. I had
Yeah.
a couple of people in a row come and talk about calamus this year, and I've started taking calamus glycerite when needed. And anyway, I've just been into glycerites, but that is a whole other tangential thing. Um, but for me, chamomile just comes up as a tea so much, which I love it as a tea.
Mhm.
I love that even when I'm traveling, if I didn't bring chamomile tea with me, I can just go to a health food store and get like traditional medicinals. They have
Yep.
great tea bags, and get chamomile. And even just you could walk into a cafe probably anywhere and get a chamomile tea. So I love that accessibility of
Yep.
it as well.
Yeah.
couldn't love the tea more. And so it's been but it's been a fun thing to just kind of play around with these other ways of working with chamomile. Yeah.
Have you worked with the Roman chamomile for like benches?
I haven't done anything with Roman chamomile, and I would say that's one of the most common questions I get is people say like,
Okay.
like, "How is this different or the same from Roman chamomile?" And I'm always like, "Ah, I don't really know." I know that they're similar but different. So if you have anything to say about that, that would be great.
I mean, I don't really use the Roman chamomile for ingesting or topically or that sort of thing, but I got super into, boy, who's now grown, but when my grown son was a kid, I planted a chamomile bench, and the Roman chamomile tends to do better, to my understanding,
Mhm.
when trod upon and sat upon than the German chamomile will do. And so, again, if we're having a hard time, it's like, go sit on the chamomile bench,
Oh, interesting. Oh, that's lovely too.
very pleasant time out, like, or I'll go sit on the chamomile bench. But
Mhm.
it's like the more it's trod upon, the more it grows. And also just
Oh.
the release of that scent when
Mhm.
it's walked upon is just, I think it's a lovely medicine. I don't know
Mm.
how I got off on that tangent, but
Yeah, well,
I
that
do.
inspires me now to grow some Roman chamomile. It's about time I learned. Everyone asks, so maybe it's time.
The thing. Yeah, that's the thing.
Well, is
Uh,
there anything else you'd like to add about chamomile?
I was thinking, what are my big wins with it? There's another real special one is I love the oil for cradle cap, the
Mm.
chamomile infused olive oil for cradle cap, uh, for nightmares and convulsions, that sort of thing. But I'm sure I'm going to get off this podcast and maybe I'll call you all, and this and this and this.
I hope you do, just so we can fangirl over chamomile some more.
Yes, let's fangirl over chamomile. But I love the opportunity to talk about it. And thank you for listening to me go on and on and
Yeah,
on.
that
Yeah.
was really fun for me too. Well, so I'm really excited to ask you more questions about your shop if you'll
Yeah.
allow it. All right. So I'm thinking, here's Rebecca. You've gone to herb school, you've been teaching, you're a medicine maker, teaching in Colorado, teaching in Bastyr, and then you're like, okay, but my dream is to open a shop. What is that first shop? Well, I have a couple questions. One,
Okay.
did you have any idea what you were getting into at that point? And two, what did your shop first look like? Because I see it now, but I imagine it probably didn't look the way it does now, with all these different employees, and it's just everything about it. So I'm just curious about that. Did you know what you're getting into, and what did that first shop look like?
Oh my goodness, these are great questions. I did not at all. I remember right before it opened, sort of hesitating because I knew my whole life was going to change and I knew it was going to be a lot of work, but I did not know. No. And it took me 7 years to open, just sort of full disclosure of like, this is what I want to do, starting to save, starting to plan, that sort of thing. I opened in the same building, but in the spot next door. Actually, the room I'm sitting in right now was the original herb shop. So it was about a third of the size that it is now. And the boy, I'm having a flood of memories of things that were different. A lot of the furniture was stuff I found on the side of the road.
Wait.
We hand wrote every single label in the
Wow.
store,
Wow.
which was crazy. And first it was just me and one other person, or me and two other people. I mean, very small scale. But, as we got even the first couple of years, I'd interviewed these incredibly brilliant herbalists. And my first question is, how's your handwriting? And I mean, the other random thought that I haven't thought about in years that just came up was I was so concerned about like things like when you buy something that has a barcode on it and you have to scrape the barcode off.
Mhm.
I was like, in my shop we're not doing that. We're going to tape the barcode on, like leaving the plastic behind it, and we're going to fold the edge of the tape so people can just pull. I mean, just insanity.
Mhm.
It's a,
Mhm.
you know
I totally appreciate that you wanted to do that, and I can totally appreciate how there's that whole, like, you can spend, like, 90% of your time doing the, like, 10% that may not matter as much. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Um, so you have your store, and I remember I got to tour the shop, so I know where you're sitting right now. Um, and you started small, and then you grew. And how has that been? I mean, I kind of like I'm asking for myself in some ways because I've been growing my own business, and I mean, it's freaking hard. I'll just
Yeah.
say it. Like, I mean, it's just like, I mean, there is no blueprint for me, and it's like to take on, more amazing people on your team and, growing is just like, it's like you have to do a lot of self growth in order to grow your business, I think. So I'm just kind
Yeah.
of curious how that was for you. You resonate with that.
Oh, I resonate. So it's been, oh wow. It's it's a little mind-blowing how, I've learned patience. I've learned um some very, very big life lessons. But the what I do want to say is starting small was one of the best things I did. And
Hmm.
my brother was incredibly helpful for me when I started in saying that, he said, Rebecca, write down every single thing that you are going to need to open this business, like down to the nail in the wall for the picture in the wall, every single solitary thing, and then double it. And that's what you need.
Hmm.
And he was right, because there were so many things that I didn't think about,
Hmm.
and also you're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna make I made a ton of mistakes. I would so much rather make $100 mistake than $1,000 mistake. And
Hmm.
so I think that is really really a good thing about starting small. And sometimes I look and I see a lot of businesses that have gotten a lot bigger than me, a lot faster. And sometimes I feel bad about myself. Like, what's wrong with me? Why am I so sort of pokey about this? But um, in the end, it's all my nervous system can handle is
Hmm.
going at the
Hmm.
pace that I mean, we're almost at 20 years now,
Wow.
you know, and we're still in the same store. Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful store that has
Uh,
expanded. That was one thing. So, my experience of the shop is that I was, um, okay. So again, I've had like a couple minutes or a couple hours of sleep. I've just seen the most amazing concert of my life where Tori played my request. Huge emotional experience. As you mentioned, there was a little bit of elevation going on for me. So it was like anyway, it was like I felt like I was like in this dream world, right? I was just like not entirely there. Um, and I got to Boulder, I went to breakfast, and then I'm like carrying all of my luggage with me, right? So I like have my like roller bag and a backpack on, walking through the streets of Boulder, and I roll up on Rebecca's Apothecary, right? I'm just there with my phone and maps and looking for it. And it was easy for me to know that I'd made it to the right place because out in front was all of these beautiful herbs growing, which I just love that so much. Like we're in an urban setting, 100%. There's a lot of cement everywhere, and yet here we are at the apothecary with their herbs in front. So I was immediately like, yes, okay. And I walk in the shop, and you just have like such a great curated experience there of both these incredible products that are made in house and then things that you have curated from other places. And I know I talked to one of your employees, Heather, about this, but like the tinctures, it was like all my favorite tinctures from companies all over the United States. And it was interesting because, like, oftentimes, like, if you go to like Whole Foods or something, there's like this company's tincture line and this company's tincture line. But these were like hand picked, like, and they were just my favorite ones. I mean, they're like kind of the famous ones, David Winston's Grief Relief, and you had Ginger Webb's Texas Medicinals there. And anyway, and then you had these incredibly beautiful products handmade in house. And I got to go in the back and get the tour and everything. And something that just really struck me is that you have these incredibly high quality products made in house, but you've scaled it. And I'm just wondering like how that was, like I got to see the herbs brewing and see some of the machinery. I don't know. Again, I'm just kind of imagining like I'm sure it didn't start out like this of, you had, and there was like, I don't know, 3 people in the back, like they were, kind of putting everything together very professionally, but it was just, there was still heart in it. I think that's what it is, Rebecca. There was just so much heart and like you could feel the plants in those products, and it just wasn't like it wasn't like an assembly line where you're just like burp, burp, burp. I don't know. Anyways, I'm just curious about that. Like, how has that been to know that you wanted to create incredible medicine, have that for the shop, and then scale that too?
Well, great. And before I talk about, I do want to say that the tinctures and who's in here, that is because of Heather Powell.
Yeah.
She is the one who has curated that whole, all of the tinctures, and I get no credit for that other than loving Heather and being so grateful that she's here. But that is
I was
100%
so
her.
impressed. I talked to Heather about it too because I was like, I'd never seen. I mean, it really was like my favorite tinctures from across the U.S. were there, and the ones I didn't know, I was like, I need to know these ones because if they're sitting with all these other great ones, then I need to know the other ones. Yeah.
I mean, that's so I'm going up. I'm not answering your question right away, but I will say one of the most important things that and I think something that has lent to the success of the shop is surrounding yourself with really skilled people,
Mhm.
because there's no way you can do it all. You know,
Yeah.
Amber Graziano is she orders our herbs, and she's just so good. She's
Mhm.
so good at what she does. So I think a lot of this, is been cultivating relationships with people, because there's no way I could do all of this.
Yeah.
um and in the early days, yeah, I did do
Yeah.
I was I in the back making stuff and writing the labels and trying to do the books and working with the one customer a day I had.
Yeah, I remember those days too. Yeah.
But I think again, it is um working with really with people who well, maybe making a mission. I worked with a friend of mine who's a business coach who sort of helped me like write mission statements for each job, and
Mhm.
that helps me figure out what do I want out of this job. And that ties in with the production side of things, because part of the mission for that is we're putting love into this,
Mhm.
and we care about this. And part of, it's a balance between, I mean, I love that you say that I've scaled up. I just feel like we're so small, like,
Well, I'm
but
thinking
we
like my
can.
kitchen counter versus your store is kind of my reference.
But I mean, we still want to be able to crunch it and be able
Yeah.
to smell it. And if we, there has been a lot of talk of outsourcing, especially the tea making and that sort of thing. And honestly, a lot of that is for health and safety, because when we're sitting there doing these batches, that is not healthy for the people doing that. We just right next to me is I'm gonna spare you and not turn the computer, but is a big cement mixer, but it's a food grade cement
Mm.
mixer. They've named it Bubba, and that's what we are now mixing our teas with to keep
Mm.
us healthier.
Mm.
But it's okay, I'm so long-winded, Rosalie, you're so patient with my answer, but the I think the scaling up, it is just sort of everything is one step at a time,
Mm.
and not letting people push you when you're not comfortable,
Hmm. Yeah.
or
Yeah.
looking at, I don't, we have Instagram. The woman who does it is great. I can't look at Instagram. It makes me feel competitive and, oh, well, they're doing that, I should be doing that. And I'm not, I just, it's not good for me. So I don't go on there at all. So just sort of maintaining, I'm a little bit blinders on, but I think it has helped me maintain this the way I want it. Okay, my control freaky side wants it to be.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah. I can appreciate that. And yeah, you've created such a beautiful space. I think my last question for you so far about the shop is the other sense that I got about the shop, it's so aesthetically beautiful. Everything's curated so well, such high quality products, both made in house and curated from afar. The other sense is this community because again, I just asked people on Facebook, like, where should I go? And there was so many people who was trying to Rebecca's Apothecary, people who lived around in the area, people who didn't live in the area. And I'm curious, like you said, one of your missions for starting or goals for starting was this kind of social justice, environmental. thing, which to me involves community. And I'm just wondering what that has been like to have a community space, and perhaps like what that's been like, because you're not just available in Boulder, but also available online too. So, what has that been like to cultivate these communities?
It's gosh, thank you for all these questions. Make me feel so good. I mean, it's been a tremendous honor, and it's been, we talk about that this is a real growth thing. It's taught me a lot about how to interact with people. I always try and think, if someone's having a hard day coming in, I try and think of maybe a family member I have or have had who tends to be difficult in stores, and just think about, but I love that person. And you may not know what's going on in there. You don't know what's going on in other people's lives or what's happening there. um One of my most favorite things about the shop is having this toy corner, and some of these toys were my son, who's 31 years old right now. Some of his toys are
Mhm.
in the corner, and having kids come in, and that if they can have this pleasant experience in the herb shop, then again, herbalism is normal for them. That's their birthright. Oh, we used to go to the tea store, and I'd have chamomile, and getting to watch them sort of grow up, or
Mhm.
watching people, yeah, grow up, and the passing of their family members, and just being able to be witness to that has been probably one of the biggest honors of my life.
Mhm.
I have to tell you something that's totally off subject, but when you were talking about the herbs out front, every year chamomile now sprouts up from the cracks in the sidewalk out
Oh,
front.
I love that. I love that so much. Yeah, wonderful. Oh, yeah, well, you really have created such a special place. I am so glad that people clued me in so that I got to witness it in person. And as I mentioned, I had like all my luggage with me when I was there. And my other memory is that, like, I remember I bought like a kids game and kids book for the little ones in my life. And I bought like flower and tea towels that were so beautiful. Um, and then, I wasn't able, and I remember being sad, like, "Oh, I'm not checking anything, so I can't bring, like, liquids, etcetera." And then I was like, "Oh, no, but I can get these things online." So, if anybody is thinking like, "Oh, I wanna experience Rebecca's Apothecary," but aren't able to make it to Boulder, Colorado anytime soon, you are online. So, yeah, such a beautiful, special place, and just, hats off to you. And I'm just, yeah, it's people like you that give me so much inspiration and hope in the herbal world, because you're out there like following your dreams, following your heart, creating these beautiful spaces, empowering people, giving people jobs. I mean, they're in a really cool way. So it's just, yeah, so many things to love, Rebecca.
I think we're in a mutual admiration society. My new chamomile sister. I just adore you. And I'm really, really pleased to be. I've been so looking forward to this. How fun. I just love,
Yeah, this has
and
been very
I've
fun.
been re-inspired, like with all these things, listening to your podcast. And I'm like, why
Aw.
am I not drinking pine needle tea? And I'm in the pines and I'm drinking all these things. So yeah, thank you.
Well, before you go, I have one last question for you. And that question is, how do herbs instill hope in you?
Oh, yes. So this has been an interesting thing. As I said, I'm living in the middle of the woods right now, and I have sort of rediscovered walking through the woods and really being able to be there. It's now been eight months I'm up there, and being able to just really slow down and just walk and enjoy. It's taken me about this length of time to remember my beginning stages as an herbalist, to like, oh my gosh, I want to start I'm going to make grandelia honey. I'm going like, just it so it instills hope in me, because it continually reawakes me. It continually surprises me. It continually comforts me,
Mhm.
and it continually holds me up.
Hmm. Oh, I really resonate with that. Yeah. And I love that, just the walk in the woods, because that's something I do. Um, pretty much daily, and that is something, just being out there with the plant friends. And yeah, there is such a felt sense of being held there, both on a practical sense, you can see the elder bush and know, like, oh, there's my medicine, and feel that practical sense, but then just the sense of the forest and all those trees and the comfort they bring, like chamomile.
Ah, maybe
Yeah.
we could take a walk together one day. I would love that.
Yeah, let's do it at my elevation though, not yours.
Okay. Well, my brother's out on Orcas. I'll come visit. Yeah.
Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah.
That'll work. That's definitely more my elevation, which for those who don't know is sea level. All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. It was just such a delight to connect with you and to connect with chamomile and hear about the shop. This has just been wonderful. Thank you so much, Rebecca.
Oh, you're so welcome, and thank you so much. What a pleasure.
Thanks for being here. Don't forget to head over to the show notes at herbswithrosalieepodcast.com to download your beautifully illustrated recipe card and to get a transcript of this show. There, you'll also be able to sign up for my weekly newsletter, which is the best way to stay in touch with me. The best way to check out Rebecca's offerings and her amazing apothecary is at the website rebeccasherbs.com. If you'd like more herbal episodes to come your way, then one of the best ways to support this podcast is by subscribing on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. I'd also love to hear your comments about this episode. What's your biggest takeaways? I deeply believe that this world needs more herbalists and plant-centered folks, and I'm so glad that you're here as part of this herbal community. Also, a big round of thanks to the people all over the world who make this podcast happen week to week. Nicole Paul is the project manager who oversees the whole operation, from guest outreach to writing show notes to actually uploading each episode and so many other things I don't even know. She really holds this whole thing together. Francesca is our fabulous video and audio editor. She not only makes listening more pleasant, she also adds beauty to the YouTube videos with plant images and video overlays. Tatiana Rusikova is the botanical illustrator who creates gorgeous plant and recipe illustrations for us. I love them. I know that you do too. Christy edits the recipe cards, and then Jenny creates them as well as the thumbnail images for YouTube. Michelle is the tech wizard behind the scenes, and Karen is our student services coordinator and customer support. For those of you who like to read along, Jennifer is who creates the transcripts each week. Xavier, my handsome French husband, is the cameraman and website IT guy. It takes an herbal village to make it all happen, including you. Okay, you've lasted to the very end of this show, which means you get a gold star and this herbal tidbit. Okay, so honestly, I was scratching my head just a bit for this herbal tidbit because this isn't the first time chamomile has made an appearance on the show. We've had brilliant interviews with Anne Armbrecht about the sustainability of herbs and chamomile, an incredible bitters recipe with my friend Leslie Likos, and I've also done 2 solo shows about chamomile too. I'm not complaining. We can never have too much chamomile. In fact, I hope more guests choose chamomile in the future. But if after this episode you're wishing you had more chamomile in your life, we've got you covered with those other episodes. But that brings me back to my issue of trying to find an herbal tidbit for something I've done a few herbal tidbits about. So I was thinking about this episode and I got to wondering, has anyone ever looked at chamomile's ability to help with adjusting to a high altitude? Because I swear that was no joke when I was visiting Rebecca's apothecary. It was a big adjustment for me. So I looked into it and I found some hits on it, but for the most part, chamomile is recommended as kind of an adjunct therapy, something to help with headaches or anxiety, both of which can happen when there's a sudden change in altitude. But I'll take it. And I think this must confirm that chamomile really does do everything.